Welcome to the 123heli.com video Introduction to Transmitter. I'm going to summarize pages 10 through 18 in the manual. First note, the manual references Mode 1 and Mode 2, and your transmitter should be a Mode 2. Those are mostly sold in the US. Okay, the control sticks are as follows. The right control stick will control the helicopter's movement to the right and left, forward and back. The left stick will control the altitude and the throttle together, so up, down, and the tail rotor is controlled by this stick with left and right movements. Okay, next is the idle up switch, top left position on the transmitter, and it's labeled idle up and has an N and a 1. The N stands for normal position, the 1 stands for sport mode 1. Basically sport mode 1 is where the throttle goes to near 100% for doing 3D flying and aerobatics. So for training, learning, and hovering, you need to keep this on the N for normal. Be very careful when you are placing the transmitter down on the ground and you are plugging in or disconnecting the battery. Be careful you don't bump the transmitter with your knee or brush it up against something where this switch might be positioned to the sport mode 1, because your RPMs will go to full and you might hurt yourself, or the helicopter might flip over. Okay, the knob up here is hover pitch. For starting out, just position that in the center position, and as you get more comfortable hovering, you're going to adjust that slightly. The goal of that is to be able to have the helicopter hovering at the same altitude while your left stick is slightly above center. So if you're finding yourself having to be further than that up, you're going to increase the dial here, and that will allow you to back off on the stick a little more and get it closer to just slightly above center. The next switch is the gyro switch. It's labeled gyro SW, and on the right side there's a 0 and a 1 representing off and on. Now the gyro is never completely turned off. What the 0 and 1 mean are that the headlock function of the gyro is turned off or turned on. And for learning and training, you really want to keep it off. So keep this switch in the 0 position, and you can experiment as you get more comfortable. If you want to experiment with the headlock mode, you can flip that to on and see how it changes the behavior of the helicopter. Okay, and with that in mind, whenever you power up your radio, all the switches should be towards the back of the radio, or the off position, or the I'm ready to fly position. So switches that are toggles on and off, they all go towards the back, and of course the exception on that is your throttle or altitude control, and you always want to start with that all the way in the down position so the motor won't engage. Okay, the gyro gain dial is right here. That controls the sensitivity of the tail as the gyro controls it. And what you want to do, again, is probably start it out in center. And as you hover the helicopter, you want to increase this to the point where the tail wags. It'll basically oscillate about half an inch to an inch very rapidly. And once you see that oscillation happening, you want to back off about a quarter to an eighth of a turn, and that should be your sweet spot. On the transmitter, we have a training switch on the top right. This is a spring-loaded switch, so it's always in the off position unless you're holding it. If someone is training you who's already experienced, they will actually use this transmitter to control the helicopter, and you will have to use a secondary transmitter which will plug in on the training receptacle back here. The trainer will start flying the helicopter with this radio, and when he's ready for you to take control, he'll hold this switch, and when he feels like you're in trouble and needs to rescue you, or you're just tired and want him to take over, then he will just release that switch and he will regain control of the helicopter. On the side of the box, you'll notice a charging receptacle. That's not needed since the batteries that came from the factory are just standard alkaline batteries. They're not rechargeable, and they do not give you a charging adapter for that. We have switches here that can reverse the servos. They should be set just like this from the factory, down, up, down, up. They shouldn't need any adjustment at all. The trim switches, there's 4 of them for each of the stick movements, and they are for fine-tuning the position when you're hovering. And the way you work it is, if you feel like you are holding the stick in any one position just to keep the helicopter stable, then you want to land the helicopter and slide that trim switch in that same direction, and that should allow you to relax off of that stick position. So keeping the stick centered will actually have the helicopter flying almost hands off. One note about the gyro switch is that there are some radios that were manufactured with the switch reversed. So to test that, I'll show you how to view the helicopter to verify that switch was set up properly. We'll power up the radio first. Now we'll plug in the battery. It'll go through its startup sequence. Okay, it's initialized. And if the switch is set correctly and you have it switched to the 0 position or the off position, you'll notice how this gyro right here is vertical or near vertical. And if you quickly move the tail left and right, you'll notice that when you stop, the servo will stay vertical. If the switch is in the headlock position, when you move the tail, you'll notice that the servo will stay full left or full right. And you don't want that for learning on it. You want it to be in the standard or off position. If this behavior is opposite of your switch, then it's basically, I'm telling you this so that you understand the rule that I explained earlier, where all the switches needed to be back for starting. Then this one will break that rule. There is another video called Fix My Switch, which will show you how to get this switch corrected back to the way it was meant to be. Thanks for watching 123heli.com video.